Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Connected Wellness Podcast. I'm Rachel Ann. I'm here with the lovely Marianne, and we are so passionate about wellness.
Here in this podcast, we look at the ways our physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all connected, and how we can take better care of our whole selves holistically so we can live our best lives. We're really excited that you're here with us on the journey.
Mhm.
Welcome back to episode 48 of the podcast.
Yes, yay, 48.
Yes, we are here and we're excited to be here, and we have a great topic that
Mm,
is definitely close to home for me.
mm.
The topic is burnout.
Yes, my friends,
Yeah.
burnout. I think we can all relate to burnout in some way. Oh,
Yeah,
golly.
at some point
Yeah.
or another, I think we've all experienced it. So, yeah, I think I'm excited to dive in and find some ways to deal with it, right? And how best to approach it, and avoid it, right? That would be
Mm.
nice. But yeah, let's start with some wellness wins. You want to
Mhm.
share, Rachel Ann?
Yeah, absolutely. My wellness win is that this past weekend I went to a conference here in New York City. A lot of churches don't have conferences in New York City, which I can understand. It's really expensive here. But I kind of like miss that. So this past weekend was a church conference and it was so beautiful. It was so intentional. It was trauma informed. Holy Spirit filled, Holy Spirit led. Um, and I'm not usually, or I have a hard time finding spaces that are so intentional and present and just grounding in that way.
Hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of spaces that are like either so trauma informed, but not Holy Spirit led, or it's so Holy Spirit led that it's not trauma informed. Seeing the two come together is just rare. And I love that this was a space where it was together and just so it was just so well thought out. I feel like the host just like read my journal and was like,
Mm,
cool, I'm gonna make a conference for
yeah.
you. So it was really beautiful. And we worshiped in different languages, which oh, that made me tear
Wow.
up because I'm just like hearing people worship the Lord in different languages. Like, yes, being Coptic, like it's just kind of we just know that. But in like different languages than
Yeah.
what I typically hear, outside of like the English, Coptic, Arabic, it was really, really nice. Lots of crying, lots of praying, lots of aha moments. So that's my wellness win. Just a very lovely time and so grateful for that. It's called
Yeah.
Sower Summit. I'll put the link down below.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you got to do that. Did it have like a
Yeah.
specific topic?
It did. The topic was living a radical life. And it was so good timing. Because it was like, how do I live a radical life in my roles? Or what does it mean to live radically, like for Christ, like at work, or, with this aspect of my identity, or
Hmm.
to pursue justice. So it was very applicable. It was very theoretical and very applicable and practical at the same time and
Yeah.
I appreciated that. It was a really holistic experience.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was really cool. So, feeling good, loving it. How about you,
that's
married
great.
to the Ann?
So, I know I've talked a little bit about like my neck issues, and I've had some
Mm,
injuries, and basically it like derailed my, especially the strength training part of my exercise routine. So that's
mm,
been like a while now, and I've really been, kind of disappointed. I missed, being able to pick up some weights and feel strong.
mm.
But I decided to try to ease back into it with a kettlebell class. You know what kettlebells are?
Oh,
Those
yeah.
round weights with the handles. So our like township here, I used to do yoga with them. They have all kinds of classes,
Mm,
like super inexpensive for residents. It's great. So I saw advertised this kettlebell class, and I've like worked with the kettlebell a little bit, but nothing major. And I was like, you know what? I feel like that might be a way to ease back into strength training.
mm.
Now, I will tell you, I don't know what I was expecting. I did not ease into anything. That first class like kicked my butt like you would not believe. Like for I want to say easily 4 or 5 days, like I had trouble walking afterwards. But
Oh,
it kicked my butt in
wow.
like the best possible way, because
Yeah.
I was like, I'm finally like having a new physical challenge. It's been so long since I've challenged myself physically because I've been trying to be cautious and, patient, right? I put this in quotes with my injuries because everybody knows I'm not patient, but with this, I was like, I can't like hurt myself to the point where I won't be able to do anything, for a long time. So I've been really trying. So it was
Mm,
really felt good to like push myself. And then the second class was not nearly as bad. I think I just
good.
needed that one like, you know, need to die here for
Mm,
a minute. And then the second class just felt good. Like it just like felt like I worked hard and it was good. And so
yeah.
I've been really happy that I'm getting into that, trying something new. And also paying attention. Like I'll ice my
Mm,
neck when I get home.
good.
I'll pay attention to if I need to take and what is it, an anti-inflammatory, if I need to like, whatever, because I don't want to make things worse. But
Mhm.
it's been exciting. So yeah, this
Yeah.
adorable little woman who leads the class, like I would never think she would torture us in such a good way, but she absolutely does. So it's been fun.
I love that. That's really cool. You like tried something new. I love that you think a kettlebell class is going to ease your way into something. Like I don't think of kettlebell as ease at all. But I love that you had that thought and I love
I
the
don't know why
intention
I
behind
thought
it.
that. That's like why as soon as like 10 minutes into the class, and I was like, I don't know what I was expecting, but it was not this, but that's okay. Like I'm
That's
just
okay.
gonna roll with it. Yeah, I'm gonna roll with it.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Are you, okay, another question. Are you still in physical therapy?
So no, but not because I just like bailed like before. It's mostly
Okay.
because he told me that I don't have joint issues. I just have muscle tension. So to
Okay.
keep going with my specific stretches and exercises and massage, because that's what you
Good.
need to deal with
Okay.
tension. So I'm still doing the therapeutic massage. I'm still stretching, um, heating pad, well, doing everything that I
Hmm.
can to deal with the tension. Um, Everything
Wow.
except lowering my stress. So that's another topic, right? Everything I can physically to alleviate the tension in my
Yeah.
neck. But yeah, so I was kind of just not dismissed, but he made it sound like, I can keep going if I want to, but it's not really necessary. So
Yeah. You
yeah,
graduated.
yeah, kind of. Yeah. We'll go with that. We'll go with
I
that.
love that. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Married to the Ann. You're doing it, girl. Good job.
Thanks. All right. So speaking of stress, let's talk about this topic of burnout.
Oh,
So,
yes.
like, why is it so universal? Because I do feel like almost everybody listening should have experienced this at some point if they're not
Mm,
currently actively experiencing it. So, why is it so
yeah.
universal?
In my opinion, burnout is just so prevalent because we live in a world that that is not conducive to our health. It is
Mm,
not a world that's like, yes, like take lots of breaks. Yes, we encourage you to say no. We encourage you to do what is best for you, all of that in ways that honestly in ways that kind of like God designed it. A lot of the times I feel like God is like, I didn't create the world to do this. I created the world to be like the garden. And
yeah,
that didn't work out. So I feel like it's that and just really we just live in I mean where Marianne and I are located is the United States, so I'll only speak from that perspective. It's just very hustle bustle and there's a lot of pressure to do things in order to have value and to have identity in that instead of just being a human being. So that's what I've kind of
yeah,
chalked it up to in terms of
yeah.
burnout. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same. And I think that there's just so many things that cause us to be stressed, so
Mm,
many facets of our lives, all of the different roles that we play. I know we've talked about that before. So, work, family obligations,
mm,
trying to take care of yourself, trying to take care of your health, so everything we deal with, adds up. And there's only so much energy that we have
mm,
physically and emotionally, right? That
yeah.
it's so easy to get overburdened, I feel like.
Yeah.
But let's back up a second and like how would you know that you're burnt out? So I think some of the symptoms, if you want to call it that, of feeling burnt out is just like feeling completely low energy, right?
Mhm.
Totally drained, unmotivated, like unfulfilled, so maybe normally you're fulfilled with your work and what you're doing, but
Mhm.
like all of a sudden everything, like nothing feels like it's important or matters or whatever.
Mhm.
Being unable to cope with like everyday responsibilities or even stressors that maybe before wouldn't have bothered you now are kind of putting you over the edge. Um, I think it's just kind of like, yeah, you literally feel this like, I can't deal with anything anymore. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
sometimes it feels like a funk, right? Like you just,
Mhm.
so I feel this sometimes where I'm just like, I don't want to do anything.
Yep.
Normally I'm like a give me my to-do list and it's such a rush to do everything, but like some days I'll just be like, I literally don't want to do anything,
Yep.
and I think that is when I am burnt out.
Yeah.
That's what I understand. Yeah. Do you have any other like things that make hey, I think I'm approaching burnout?
Yeah, it's the clinical term is anhedonia, which is the things that used to fill you up and bring you joy. Either you don't have the energy to do those things anymore, or you do those things and they are not fulfilling. They are not bringing you joy in the same ways that they were before.
Hmm.
Basically, just things are just hard. Like
Yeah.
the things that are not supposed to be hard or things that have not historically been hard for you are just hard now. And
Yeah.
usually with burnout, there's a sense of like, ooh, I can pinpoint it because a really common one is with work, right? Especially where we live. Most people experience burnout in their vocation. And so it's like, oh, because I'm so burnt out from my job, I just have a really difficult time doing XYZ that's also for my job. So because I'm so burnt out, I have no desire to do this project. I would normally really love to do this,
Hmm.
but I just don't have that desire anymore. And so when you start to notice that you're feeling a way about something that you don't typically feel, and it's from a place of like exhaustion and prolonged stress, burnout is something that I would invite you to look at.
Yeah, because you're helping me see, because when I was like thinking about what are the symptoms, right? A
Mhm.
lot of them sound like symptoms of depression.
Yep.
So low energy, lack of motivation, lack of fulfillment, right? Like that feeling of being drained, maybe not wanting to get out of bed because you're just like too tired, not being able to cope. All of those are symptoms of depression, right?
Yep, absolutely. So there are similarities and overlap between burnout and depression. Honestly, I'm trying to not be super clinical, but the clinical term for burnout is adjustment disorder.
Mm.
So I'm on DSM-4, so I'm one book behind, but could be called something else in 2024. But basically, adjustment disorder is when somebody experiences something that's so stressful and their lack of the ability to cope with that causes stress, anxiety, and depression. And it's not so much of like because you lack the ability. It's more so there are things that are happening that is making it difficult for you to cope with the change. So for example, if you're stressed out about something in your job and you are not able to apply your coping mechanisms because you are so stressed and so tired and so irritated, right? That's where it's the adjustment disorder because your ability to do something that you would be able to do, like cope, adjust through coping, you are not able to do. And that comes out, there's adjustment disorder with anxiety, adjustment disorder with depression. There's, so many parameters for that. Um, with depression specifically, though, so where we see the overlap is okay, I'm trying to like not be super clinical term heavy. Depression is basically when you have feelings of hopelessness and difficulty doing things that are typically easy for you to do, difficulty sleeping or sleeping too much, difficulty doing things that are like smaller tasks that you typically can do, stuff like that, right? Due to feelings of hopelessness and just dread and just down. You just feel down. Depression, it is long, it is heavy, and it is deep. And that's what burnout can lead to. So if you are experiencing, let's say you're burning if you do not tune into the reasons why you are burning, then you will approach a burnout. And it can look like depression, right? Depression is
Hmm.
long, meaning it's at least 2 weeks of you being in a depressive episode. It's deep, meaning it's like hitting your core and it's affecting everything that you're doing, even outside of work, right? You might feel this way because of work, but it's spilling into and it's leaking into other areas of your life, right? What to say, heavy. It's heavy. If you speak to somebody who has depression, they will tell you it feels like when they move around, it feels like there's these invisible weights on their
Hmm.
body, on their legs, on their arms, on their shoulders, because it feels so heavy, everything that they're holding in. So we
Yeah.
see a lot of that with burnout because essentially the ability to do things that you typically would be able to do to help you feel better and healthier in a situation, you just don't have the gusto to do it. So
Yeah.
there is a lot of similarities, which is probably why you good observation skills on your end. And a lot of times people do have depression and even anxiety because of burnout, whether they're burnout from their job. People who volunteer too much have burnout. People who are caregivers in any
Hmm.
capacity, whether it's a parent or they are caring for a parent or a loved one, they will experience burnout. If you are managing a toxic relationship or a difficult relationship, you'll experience burnout from that relationship.
Yeah.
So definitely in the work setting, we see it like a lot, but essentially it's any role that you have that is negatively impacting your ability to manage and cope with that situation. Burnout is a potential for that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it could be literally all of the situations you described. Someone
Mm-hmm.
could have a demanding job, they could be in a bad relationship, they could be caring for someone in their family, so imagine, gosh, one of those enough, or one of those is enough to
Mm.
put you in burnout. But if you're dealing with more than one, like no wonder
Mm-hmm.
this is such a common situation. But so
Yeah.
what I'm hearing about the burnout versus depression, that depression, like you said, is this, it's much deeper, it's much more kind of all encompassing. And with burnout, I think if you took some steps to give yourself rest, right, to
Mm-hmm.
give yourself breaks, and we're going to talk about some of these things, boundaries and prioritizing and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
that you will start to feel some relief. But with depression, it's probably not that simple. And maybe you can't even take the steps to do that because of the depression. So, what I'm
Mm-hmm.
also hearing is that anyone who's dealing with any of these feelings and they're like, I don't know if this is depression or if I'm just burnt out, like, guess what? Both of those things could be helped by talking to somebody, right? So if you're
Yeah.
not
Yep.
sure what it is, you don't have to figure it out. That's not our job.
Yep.
That's why people go to school and have certifications and licenses so that they can help you figure that out. So either one of those, I think it's very appropriate to talk to someone, a therapist, and be like, hey, I'm feeling these things. I'm
Yep.
not sure what it is, and then you could get to the cause and the treatment. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because literally when I was going through that list and I was like, oh, I'm feeling all of these things lately, actually,
Mm,
specifically. And then I was like, oh my gosh, am I depressed? Because I've
mm,
never, as much as I've dealt with anxiety, which I've talked about a lot on here, I've never, thank God, I don't think dealt with depression. So when I was
mm,
thinking about all of those things and I was like, am I depressed? Like this is new,
mm,
I don't think, but I don't think that I am. I think it's just
mm,
a burnout, or burning. I thought that was interesting that you said that, burning
mm,
versus completely burnt out, which is, I think, when you've completely reached your limit. And
mm,
that's happened to me before too. And your body's just like,
mm.
nope, you
Nope.
know,
Mm-hmm.
like you're done, you're going to be like flat for however long until you start to make some changes. Like that's definitely happened to me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that was a good clarification. And I always appreciate your
Yeah.
clinical perspective. So don't feel bad. If we need to define clinical words,
Yeah.
I think it's okay, but I think that was real helpful.
Good. I'm glad that that was helpful. Um, you brought up an interesting point, which is, oh man, like, am I feeling depressed? I know I can be anxious, but depression, that's not something typical for me. Depression and anxiety are friends.
Yeah.
Major depressive disorder is the actual complete term of depression. The major in that term is because it usually encompasses aspects and symptoms of different disorders, including anxiety. And so if you are somebody that's just like, oh, like I don't typically feel depressed, I'm typically feeling anxious, but something new is coming along, you may be just in a moment of feeling depressed. It's there's also another term called dysthymia, which is like a baby depression. It's
Hmm.
not long lasting and it's not as deep and it's not as heavy, but it's present. You can notice a difference between it being present and not present. And it's so common that there's actually a new depression type of diagnosis now called persistent depressive disorder, which is when you have a lingering feeling of depression for at least 2 years. And again, it's not as long, it's not as heavy, and it's not as deep, but it's there, always just kind of chill in the background. But you can
Hmm.
feel a little bit of dysthymia maybe for like a few days. That's normal. If you're somebody who's grieving, you're probably gonna feel some dysthymia due to your grieving. That makes sense.
Sure.
So our feelings are friends, y'all. That's the fun part about being a complex human.
Yeah, you took me back to my psychobiology classes when you said
Ah,
dysthymia. That's that
yeah.
took me back. Yeah, that's interesting. And again, that's why it helps to talk it out,
Mm,
because like you said, is there a trigger, right?
mm,
Like, so I had never heard, I don't remember that adjustment disorder. So is there something that changed, right? Like that's triggering you to feel like this? For me, it's this past month that I told you that every
mm,
weekend was completely booked. So basically, I lost my rest. I lost my weekly rest, and I think that's it. And I had to plan so many things, one after the other after the other. So yes, that's kind of like a trigger event that's maybe leading to this process of burning out, right?
mm,
So versus if there's no trigger, then yeah, maybe we need to address what mental health things are going on in the background, right? If you can't
mhm.
pinpoint that something is triggering these feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I would love to talk about is how do we deal with it? So, okay, I think that I'm feeling some symptoms of burnout. Yes, there's a lot going on with work, with the obligations, with family, with whatever it is. What can I do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, not to sound like a broken record, this is something to really get support in. The reason why I highlight that is because when somebody is burning, you're not even at full burnout. If you are burning, your ability to problem solve and to come up with coping mechanisms is hindered. And that's not because of a
Hmm.
deficiency on your end. That's because
Hmm.
you are burning, right? And
Hmm.
so if somebody is feeling stressed and you're like, "Hi, you're feeling stressed and I need you to come up with a solution right now." Their ability to come up with a solution when they are feeling stress at a high degree, that's they're not going to come up with great solutions. And then they're going to feel even more stress, which is now going to decrease their mental health and overall health, right?
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
say this because you are not expected, just like Marianne said, none of us are expected to know how to all of a sudden apply coping mechanisms when we have never spoken to a trusted professional about these things. Talking to a trusted professional can help you figure out what are coping mechanisms that are great for you. Absolutely do a Google search. I'm sure ChatGPT knows because they be knowing everything. That's great, but that's different than talking it out with a human, right? Especially because when you talk it out, you are verbally processing and you are
Hmm.
externalizing the tension and the stress that is taking up energy inside of your body. So that's first and foremost, seeking support. Secondly, let's say you're not burning, but you're like, I'm noticing some stuff, and I'm at a place where I can do a little bit of solution-oriented thinking. I can apply some things. Cool. That's when I would say think about the areas of your life that you want to add some boundaries around. So typically, the reason why we have things like burnout and all of that is because there's some boundaries that we haven't put in place. And there's a lot of reasons why we don't put in those boundaries, whether it's because of our family, our friends, the world we live in, money, all of the things, right? It's all legit. And that's why having a practitioner is really helpful to help you figure out the origin of it. Um, looking and saying, for example, for work, it's like, wow, because I've been working until 9 p.m. every single day, I'm probably either burning or en route to burning. So if I were to change my hours, if I were to maybe do less work on this one night and then maybe do a little bit of more work on another day, that way I'm not going to bed super late because I'm not ending my work day late, maybe that will help. Maybe I have to have a conversation with my manager. Maybe I have to delegate more, right?
Mhm,
If you are somebody who loves to help people, chances are you probably need to delegate a little bit more because we just love
mhm,
to help and it's so great, but we're exhausting ourselves and burning out in the meantime. So what are the things that I could be delegating? So thinking about boundaries around the actual thing that is causing you stress, and then also asking support from your network. So let's say you are feeling burnt out by work. Let's say you are married, you are like, okay, I'm gonna put boundaries around work. I'm not gonna work until 9 p.m. anymore. But also let me have a conversation with my spouse and be like, yo, I feel like I'm burning or en route to burning. For the next 2 weeks, can you just help me out a little bit more with things than like typical, right? So maybe I need a little bit more help doing XYZ chore that I usually do. Can you actually take the lead on that? Because
mhm,
I'm gonna start to need to recover from the burnout that I'm experiencing, right? It's a holistic, community-oriented approach so that you know that you are not responsible for figuring out all on your own. Because if you
mhm.
feel that way, you're not actually then going to come up with a solution because that's a really big burden to ask from someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are two that I can think of. And there's also more, but I'm curious for you if there's anything you have tried or anything you've heard of, what would those be?
So yeah, setting boundaries is huge. And when I do them well, I do notice a very positive change. So yeah, but something that I read, and I love this and I really want to try this. So this
Mhm,
cognitive neuroscientist was talking about burnout and ways
mhm,
to try to avoid it. And she said that we all need to schedule, not necessarily schedule, but make sure that we have three types of breaks.
mhm,
Okay, I love things like this, so I'm sorry if you don't, if you're listening, but we need macro breaks,
mhm.
meso breaks, and micro breaks. Let's break
Mm,
down what these mean.
mm,
Okay, so, and then we'll talk about what did she actually mean by a break. So a macro break means a half day or a full day off every month,
yes.
right? And you might think, okay, well, yeah, I don't work Saturdays, like I'm off at least once a month. But no, let's talk about what off means. Off
Mm,
means having no responsibility at all to anybody or anything during that time, like being
yep.
able to completely psychologically detach, right?
Hmm.
Whatever that means for you, if that means sleeping, if it means reading, if it means going to the movies, if it means hiking, whatever it means that you do not have any sort of responsibility, right? Psychological detachment for a half to a full day every month. So think about that. That might be like we
Mm,
talked about this before, putting your phone on do not disturb, just telling your loved ones, "Hey guys, I just need, Saturday afternoon, like I just need to be off," right? Um, Something like that. So that's a macro break. Meso just means middle. It's probably
mm,
Latin prefix or something like that. So the meso breaks is a couple hours off a week, right?
mm,
So again, a full day or a half day a month, a couple hours a week, and then micro is a few minutes a day. So you
mm,
need a few minutes, like 10 minutes a day, where you just shut everything out and you get to have this like brain rest, right? Like that's
mm-hmm.
the problem. You might have physical rest sometimes, but you don't have brain rest because you're planning things, you're, preparing to do other things, whatever it is. That's at least my problem. I'm always
Yeah,
planning the next thing that needs to get done. So I love that. And it doesn't
yeah.
feel, those amounts don't feel too difficult. A half
Mm.
a day a month, that feels reasonable, right? A few
Mm-hmm.
hours a week, 2 hours a week, that feels reasonable, and a few minutes a day. But having those built in as non-negotiables for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the point, like that you build them in. It's just as important as a work meeting, as an appointment at the doctor's, whatever it is, and you stay true to them. So I loved that psychological detachment was the
Yeah.
phrase that she used. And that sounds blissful to me.
Mm-hmm.
Psychological
Yeah.
detachment. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, Like just a sigh, some peace. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a healthy detachment. Um, the mezzo one sounds like Sabbath.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, God, you are so good.
Oh yeah,
Just the
we
I
talked about this with Sabbath that like the world always eventually agrees with what the Bible says,
Yeah,
right? Like,
eventually.
yeah. Yeah, eventually they're like, "Oh yeah, it's actually a really good idea to take a break once a week." And God's like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
said that, thousands of years ago. Like
Yeah, but glad you
this
got the
is
message
nothing
now.
new." Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that is really beautiful because it's encouraging mindfulness
Mm,
um, through all parts of your day. And it's saying, like, hey, if you take a few minutes to just tune into what's happening in your body, you'll probably realize this is a great time to healthily detach a little bit
hmm.
just for a few minutes, you know? And I wonder, I'm thinking about for people who are like neurodivergent or for people who have really busy lives, how doing even more of this, right? Her suggestions was like half a day or a few hours a week or a few minutes a day. I feel like for people who have nervous systems that are on overdrive or people whose bodies just require more energy to do things, maybe even extending it. It's like, no, I'm going to do a full
Hmm.
day and it has to be
Hmm.
twice a month, or I'm going to do XYZ. So I think this is a beautiful invitation that this neuropsychologist is giving us into really examining what's happening inside and how can we make sure that we're nourishing it well, right? If we're talking
Yeah.
about this from a Christian perspective, the Lord gave us our bodies, and we're thankful, and one way we can show our gratitude is by stewarding it well. And so
Hmm.
when we do these things, we are stewarding our mind and our bodies well, and we will likely have more positive and healthy experiences with God because we are in a place of stillness and a place of being instead of being like doing too much. So this is
Yeah.
a beautiful invitation. I love that. Oh my God. The idea of just like sitting on my couch and reading for a whole day with my phone on do not disturb.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Sounds like
That sounds
heaven.
like
Yeah.
heaven.
Seriously. Yeah.
Oh
Oh boy.
man.
Okay. Wait, you said something that I wanted to respond to. I love that you mentioned stewardship because
Mm,
I feel like I think about that with my physical body, right? And that's why it's
mm,
important to take care of my body. This is a gift from God. I don't want to, not take care of it. But I don't think about that with my mind, actually. And I don't know
interesting.
why, but you just mentioned it, and that's very true. Like, my mind and what it can do is absolutely a gift from God, one of the
Mm,
biggest gifts that He allows me to think and use my brain and, have feelings and do all the things that my brain does. But if I do not give myself the chance to take a break, if I
mm,
don't allow myself to clear my mind at some point, that's not taking good care of my mind. And like you mentioned, you cannot meet with God when your brain is so cluttered,
mm,
and that happens to me all the time as well. So there's
mm.
so many negatives to not taking the time to allow your mind to clear, to give yourself that psychological break. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there was another thing though, and you can come back to this if you want to, that I thought was interesting. The same cognitive neuroscientist said this. So she said, okay, you need these breaks, but kind of in the opposite direction, we need to engage in cognitively demanding activities that are different to what we normally do. So, for example, if
Mm.
you are burnt out by work, right?
Mhm.
And whatever it is that you do for work, you need to try to use your brain for something else, right?
Mm.
Like we need to stimulate a different part of the brain that's going to challenge you in a different way than usual.
Mm.
And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so spot on, because two things that I have done in the past few years that were very impactful for me was taking a knitting class and taking a creative writing class. And I loved them
Mm.
both so much because it was exactly that. All day I'm science and math and, academia and like thinking about, all of the things I need to think about for my classes, right? But then I turned to this knitting class, and it's a completely different, part of my brain that I get
Mm,
to stimulate, that I get to
mm,
activate. And the same thing with the creative writing. And it was definitely demanding. Both of
mm,
them were demanding activities, but in a completely different way than I had been using my brain the rest of the week. And so I found them to be enjoyable, fulfilling, and it was probably very healthy for me to be doing that with my brain, and I didn't realize why, but that's I think what she was talking about there.
mm.
So, and you mentioned
Yeah.
that too, I think when you just rediscovered reading, it was about like kind of waking up your brain a little bit, right? Doing
Yeah.
something different. So, yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, it reminds me of that conversation we had about eight dimensions of wellness. You're doing intellectual wellness at that
Yeah,
time. You know, you
yeah.
are engaging your brain in that way, and your brain is working out in that way. So I love that. That's such a good idea. Maybe that's a takeaway. I'm thinking about what I would love to do knitting. Um, I'm so intimidated by it, but it looks really cool, you know? And like you see, I feel like on Instagram now they have these like advertisements of these like kits, and they give you the right amount of needle and
Yeah.
thread and all of that, and they give you the directions to make a really cute, I don't know, bear thing. And I'm like, that would be so cool, but I'll be thinking about what type of new thing that is appropriately challenging for my brain in that way.
I highly recommend something that is like a class, and
Mm,
like look in your library, look in the community. Like there's stuff that's often very inexpensive, but those
mm.
kits, especially I feel like if you've never done it before, may be more stressful than they are enjoyable, because like it just makes such, at least for
Mm,
me, I don't know, maybe I'm a visual learner, but it makes such a big difference for someone to show me how to
yeah,
do something, versus even watching it on a video or seeing the instructions laid out. Like it makes a huge difference. So,
same. I'm a visual learner too. Yeah.
I would hate for you to be like, I'm doing this, for something good for my brain, and then to get like super frustrated, by it. That wouldn't be fun. Um, but yeah, yeah, I
Mm,
thought that was great. I'm definitely the macro, meso, micro breaks is my
mm,
big takeaway. I'm gonna try to build them in, and really think about what that means to detach, right? Like,
mm,
because yes, I might be, just sitting there with a book, but like, am I really taking the time to clear my mind, from
yeah.
my obligations, from those things? And that is linked to mindfulness, so
Hmm.
like if I am able to just be in this moment, right? Like to be in this moment with my cup of tea and my book or whatever it is, and not be thinking about, the next hour or the next day, then I can really take the benefit of that detachment. And so
Mm,
mindfulness is um such a buzzword. I don't know if it's still such a big buzzword as it was in the last few years, but
mm,
it's really it's really important. Like, you know what I
yeah.
mean? It's not just a thing that is like thrown out there in the wellness world or whatever. Like it isn't, if you cannot be in the moment, like the moment is all we have, right?
Mm,
So like
mm,
that, literally this moment is all I have. Like the past is gone, the future may not come. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? But like this moment
yeah.
right now is all I have. So if I can't be in it, if I can't extract, joy from it right now, then like what else is there?
Yeah.
Not to
Hmm.
be morbid or anything, but I think there's
Mm-mm.
value to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a sobering moment that we all need to kind of really tune into what are the nitty-gritty things that are important that we've just kind of been overlooking. And a lot of the times it is those things that we keep overlooking or we don't think are as much of a big deal or oh it'll be fine on its own, whatever, whatever. But as we neglect it, we start to see what happens. We start to see the symptoms of distress because we have neglected those things that are important, which for a lot of us who are experiencing burnout, it's our needs and making sure that we're okay and that we are well. So,
Yeah.
hmm, this was beautiful. I love this.
Yeah. We have a little bit more time left. So I
Oh,
actually
sweet.
have a suggestion.
Yeah,
This
let's
is
do
for
it.
me. We all know that this is like this is my own, session almost every episode here. So this is what I'm thinking, because I just said, how can I make sure that I get the benefit of this time off, right? So
Mm.
I think that there's at least two things that I can try, and you tell me if you can think of any others. And this is, of course, not just for me. I know I'm not the only one with all of these thoughts in my head. There's some of you that are with me, but I think there's two things. I think one is a brain dump. I know that
Mm.
you've talked about this. I think you're a fan, right?
Yep.
So if I'm about to take the next couple hours off, like maybe I take 5 minutes and just do a brain dump, just write down whatever's in my brain, right? Get it all out, because that will help at least clear part of it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
brain dump before your time's off, and then say a prayer,
Mm.
right? Like, God, I really need this time. You know that I need this time. I need some rest. Like, can you please help me? Right?
Mm.
Can you help me feel your presence? Can you help me feel some peace? Can you help me be still
Mm.
during this time? So that's what I'm going to try. Do you have any other thoughts that could help with the times off?
I love that. I'm going to say something about the brain dump real quick, which is brain dumps are amazing. One of the reasons why they are so amazing, though, is when you do not look at what you wrote down.
Mm,
That is the key with a brain dump. You write everything down. It doesn't matter if it's improper grammar, spelling, none
mhm,
of that. You write it down and then you shred it, you crumple it up. If you're doing it on your notes app, you delete it immediately. And that makes it to be a really empowering experience. So, that's my 2 cents on the brain dump exercise, which I just wrote about in my newsletter this week. So, we're
nice.
so tuned in. Um, and then something else that I'm thinking about for the time off, what to do. I think it's a really beautiful question to ask yourself, which is what brings your soul to become alive? What is something that sets your soul on fire? A lot of people say that, but sometimes that seems like we have to do something really big.
Hmm.
So I kind of reframe it as like, what's something that makes you feel alive? What's something that brings you joy? What's something that brings you peace or a little twinkle, right? So you could think about, this week I really, was doing a lot. I really need a peace right now. What is something that brings about peace for me? Right? This week was like pretty chill. I need something that will really invigorate me. Okay, what's something that will bring a little oomph, right? Then you can spend your time off doing that. So really asking yourself what it is that you need and then providing whatever it is that is. So
Hmm.
I think that that's a really helpful thing to keep in mind too when you're planning for the time off.
Yeah, I like that. Oomph for me would be kettlebell class. Definitely. You need to get invigorated and, sweat like 5 pounds of water, then definitely kettlebell class. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Well, this was great. Yeah, I think this was wonderful. I hope that you guys will share with us what helps you when you're starting to feel like you're burning. I'm not used to saying that, but I like that when you're just starting to feel like it's starting, you're
Mhm.
burning. Because what is that phrase, burning at both ends or something? You know?
Oh, I forgot the phrase, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Something like that. So
Mm.
yeah, so I guess that makes sense. But yeah, so what do you do? What, do you think about these macro, meso, and micro breaks?
Mm.
What about this kind of different type of intellectual stimulation? Um, yeah, so let us know what you think. We always like to hear from you. And Rachel, I'm
Yeah.
sure you're going to tell them all the many ways they can get in contact with us.
Yes, absolutely. We want to hear all of your thoughts, y'all. And know that we are in this boat of trying to figure it out. So you could really be sharing some great ideas that could be really helpful for us and for other folks who tune into the podcast. We would love, love, love to hear from you. If you want to email us, you could do that. We're at connectedwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at Connected Wellness Podcast. We're also on Facebook at Connected Wellness Podcast. If you want to reach out to Marianne specifically, you can reach out to her on Instagram at Waba Saba. If you want to reach out to me on Instagram, you can find me there at Real with Rachel Ann. All of the information will be down below, including the link for the conference that I just talked about. And shameless plug, I'm having a workshop on October 27th to help you de-stress and journal with God. So I'll put the link below. You can sign up for that and I'll give y'all a promo code because I think you're great and I love promo codes. So yeah, that's what we got going on for today, y'all. I'm gonna pass it over to Marianne.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you do find some moments of true rest. And until next time, be well.
Yes, be well, everybody. Bye.